Most men walk through life convinced they have a sixth sense for attraction, believing that if a woman were falling for them, it would be obvious, loud, and impossible to miss. They expect a grand confession or a clear change in her vocabulary. But the reality is far more complex and subtle. When a woman begins to experience the weight of genuine emotional attachment, her first instinct isn't to broadcast it, it is to protect it. She knows that once those feelings are out in the open, she loses her leverage and her armor. So instead of being more open, she often becomes more guarded, creating a paradox that leaves the average man completely confused and ultimately leading him to walk away right when things are getting serious. This hidden transition is why so many guys fail to close the gap between a casual spark and a real relationship. When a woman starts catching deep feelings, she doesn't hand you a map. She buries the truth under layers of composure, sarcasm, or even calculated indifference. She might lean on humor to deflect a serious moment, or use a dry, witty remark to mask the fact that her heart is racing just because you walked into the room. To the untrained eye, she looks like she doesn't care. But to the man who understands the language of silence, those walls are actually a massive signal of her growing investment. She is testing the waters, trying to see if you are observant enough to notice the shift and strong enough to handle the vulnerability she's not yet ready to speak aloud. While most men are busy chasing her words, waiting for a text, a like, or a verbal "I miss you," they are completely blind to the truth written all over her quietest moments. The real signs aren't found in what she says, but in the spaces between her sentences. It's in the way she holds her breath for a split second when you touch her arm, or the way she remembers a tiny detail about your life that you mentioned weeks ago and then tries to act like it was nothing. This silence isn't a void, it's an emotionally charged atmosphere. Most guys get frustrated by this lack of clarity and start demanding answers, which only pushes her further into hiding. They don't realize that her silence is her most honest confession. What I am revealing to you is a fundamental shift in perspective that will change how you view every woman who has ever crossed your path. You have to stop looking for fireworks and start looking for the whisper. If you only value the things she tells you directly, you will only ever have a surface level connection. But when you learn to read her stillness, her hesitations, and her sudden shifts in energy, you gain access to a part of her that most men will never see. She is waiting for the man who doesn't need to be told, the man who can feel her heart beating through the silence and recognize that her carefulness is actually a sign of how high the stakes have become for her. Once you master this awareness, you stop guessing and start knowing exactly where you stand. When you want to understand if a woman is truly falling for you, you have to stop looking at the big, obvious gestures and start paying attention to the psychological micro shifts that happen when she thinks you aren't looking. Most men wait for a clear, verbal green light, but a woman who is genuinely catching feelings will often try her absolute hardest to play it cool. She doesn't want to seem too easy or too invested before she knows where you stand, so her body and her subconscious end up doing all the talking for her. You have to become an observer of her energy rather than a listener of her words. The first thing you will notice is a subtle softening of her tone. Her voice might lose its sharp, defensive edge and become more melodic or gentle when she speaks specifically to you. This is a physiological response to comfort and attraction. She is literally relaxing her guard in your presence, even if her mind is telling her to stay stoic. Beyond the sound of her voice, you'll begin to see a distinct shift in her physical presence and how she occupies the space around you. This is where her energy shift becomes undeniable to a man who is paying attention. She might lean in slightly more than usual, or you'll catch her subconsciously mirroring your movements. If you take a sip of your drink, she takes a sip of hers. If you lean back, she follows suit. These are deep-seated psychological signals that she is in sync with you on an emotional level. It's as if her nervous system is trying to bridge the gap between your two souls, before her pride allows her to do it with words. She isn't just being polite, she is becoming tethered to your rhythm. When a woman is indifferent, her energy is static and flat. But when she's falling, her energy becomes reactive, vibrant, and focused entirely on the frequency you are putting out. The most powerful evidence, however, is found in her eyes, the one part of her that she can almost never fully control. You'll start to notice that she looks at you just a second or two longer than is socially normal. It's that fleeting moment where her gaze lingers on your face after a joke has ended, or while you're mid sentence. In that extra second, she isn't just looking at you, she is searching you. She is trying to process the intensity of what she's feeling while simultaneously checking to see if you feel it too. If you catch her in one of these stares, she might quickly look away or find something else to focus on. But don't mistake that for disinterest. That look away is a reflex of her heart being caught in the act. Her eyes are whispering the truth that her mouth is too afraid to say. And if you can learn to hold that gaze without flinching, you communicate that you are a man who can handle the weight of her emotions. You must realize that when she acts cold or indifferent, she is usually just being incredibly careful with her heart. To her, these growing feelings are sacred and fragile, and she's not going to hand them over to just any guy who happens to be around. She is effectively interviewing your character through these quiet moments to see if you are the kind of man who makes her feel safe. She's watching to see if you're observant enough to catch the whispers, or if you're too loud and distracted to notice the depth she's offering. Once you peel back the surface and understand that her coolness is actually a protective shell for her warmth, your entire perspective will shift. You'll stop being frustrated by her lack of obvious interest and start being fascinated by the intricate, beautiful way she is slowly letting you in. When you finally decode these hidden signs, the mystery disappears, and you'll realize that she's been shouting her feelings at you through her silence all along. When a woman begins to act distant or cold, most men experience an immediate, visceral sense of panic. Their first instinct is to assume that the spark is dying, that they've done something wrong, or that she's found someone else. They start overanalyzing every text, every silence, and every short answer, convinced that they are losing her. However, in the vast majority of cases where a real connection has already been established, this sudden withdrawal isn't a sign of fading interest. It is actually a massive indicator of rising stakes. She isn't pulling away because she likes you less. She is pulling away because she is terrified of how much she likes you. For a woman, the realization that she is losing her heart to someone isn't just a butterfly moment. It is a moment of extreme vulnerability. She knows that by falling for you, she is handing you the power to hurt her, and that realization triggers a primal urge to retreat to safety. You have to understand that for most women, falling in love is never a casual experience. It is a significant emotional risk. While men often focus on the thrill of the chase, women are often calculating the cost of the fall. To her, deep attraction means surrendering a certain level of control over her own happiness. It means opening up her past, her insecurities, and her future plans to someone who could, theoretically, walk away at any moment. That coldness you're feeling is actually her psychological armor snapping into place. She is trying to slow down the momentum because the intensity of the connection is moving faster than her sense of safety can keep up with. She's not playing a game or trying to be manipulative. She is using a defense mechanism to manage the internal chaos that comes with real emotional investment. She is essentially putting herself in a timeout to process the fact that you have become a person of importance in her life. This phase of hesitation is one of the most critical turning points in any relationship, and it is where most men fail the test. When she builds that temporary wall, she isn't doing it to keep you out forever. She is doing it to see how you react to the barrier. She is subconsciously testing your emotional stability and your grounding. If you respond to her distance by becoming needy, aggressive, or demanding, you confirm her fears that the connection is unstable and that you aren't a safe place for her heart. You essentially prove to her that you can't handle her when things get complicated. But if you can remain centered, patient, and unfazed by her withdrawal, you send a powerful message of strength. You show her that you are a man who can stand firm while she navigates her own internal storms. Ultimately, her pulling away is an invitation for you to demonstrate your character. She needs to know that if she lets that wall down completely, you aren't going to disappear or crumble under the weight of her vulnerability. She is looking for a man who is heavy enough to stay put, even when she creates a little bit of distance. When she sees that you don't punish her for her fear, that you don't go cold in return or start chasing her frantically, her anxiety begins to evaporate. She starts to realize that her feelings for you aren't a threat to her safety, but rather a path toward a deeper, more secure bond. By staying grounded while she figures out her own emotional chaos, you provide the very stability she needs to finally stop running and let herself fall for real. The greatest mistake a man can make when a woman enters a phase of silence or hesitation is to take it personally and react with his own ego. When you meet her silence with your own coldness or her distance with flashes of anger, you are essentially telling her that your presence is conditional and that your emotions are just as volatile as the ones she is currently trying to manage. If you start demanding immediate answers, asking what's wrong every 5 minutes, or chasing her harder to force a confession, you aren't showing her love. You are showing her your own insecurity. This pressure acts like gasoline on a fire. It triggers her flight response and confirms her deepest fear that if she lets you in, you will be another source of stress rather than a source of strength. She is already battling her own internal chaos. And if you become reactive, you prove to her that you aren't capable of being the anchor she needs to steady her ship. The evolved man understands that his most powerful tool isn't his words, but his consistency. Consistency is the silent language of reliability, and it is the only thing that can truly dismantle a woman's defenses over time. When she is uncertain, she is subconsciously putting the connection through a stress test. She is asking herself, is my heart safe here? Can this man handle me when I'm not at my best? Will he stay the same if I pull back? If your energy remains steady, kind, and present, regardless of her temporary withdrawal, you provide a definitive, resounding yes to all those questions. You aren't playing a game. You are demonstrating that your character is a fixed point. This doesn't mean you become a doormat. It means you remain the same grounded individual she was attracted to in the first place, refusing to let her temporary emotional fluctuations dictate your inner peace. Creating emotional safety is the ultimate cheat code for deep attraction, because safety melts fear faster than any grand romantic gesture ever could. You can buy her the most expensive flowers, write the most poetic letters, or take her on the most lavish dates. But none of that matters if she feels like she's walking on eggshells around your temper or your neediness. Real safety is built in the quiet moments, where you choose patience over pressure. It's found in the way you keep showing up with the same warm energy, even when she's been a little distant. When she realizes that you aren't going to blow up, disappear, or start a fight just because she needed a moment to breathe, her nervous system begins to relax. She stops seeing you as a potential threat to her emotional well-being and starts seeing you as her sanctuary, the one place where she doesn't have to perform or hide. Ultimately, your steady presence is the only answer she is truly looking for. By remaining consistent, you show her that you have emotional weight, that you are a man who cannot be easily moved by the winds of doubt or the storms of fear. This level of maturity is incredibly rare and therefore incredibly attractive. It shifts the dynamic from you chasing her to her naturally gravitating toward you because you represent the stability she craves in a chaotic world. When she feels that you are a solid foundation, she no longer feels the need to build walls. She realizes that she doesn't have to protect herself from you because you have already proven through your actions and your consistency that her heart is safer with you than it is anywhere else. Once that trust is established, the silence ends, the walls crumble, and the real connection finally begins to flourish. True masculine leadership is one of the most misunderstood concepts in modern dating, often mistaken for being the loudest person in the room or the one who makes all the demands. In reality, real leadership has nothing to do with dominance or control. It is about providing a clear, unwavering emotional direction for the relationship. When a woman is navigating a storm of her own feelings, she doesn't need a captain who is going to scream at the waves or try to force the ocean to be still. She needs a man who can hold the wheel steady, someone whose internal compass doesn't spin out of control just because the weather has changed. If she is hiding her feelings from you, it is almost certainly because her past has taught her that vulnerability is a liability. She has likely been in environments, whether with family or past partners, where expressing her true emotions led to judgment, conflict, or abandonment. Your job as a leader isn't to force her to speak, but to prove through your actions that the old rules no longer apply in your presence. When you create a space where she is never pressured to perform or forced to confess her feelings before she's ready, you are practicing the highest form of leadership. Most men make the mistake of thinking they can negotiate for love or demand clarity as if it's a business transaction. But emotions don't work that way. By stepping back and letting her process her internal world without the threat of your frustration, you become the literal calm she has been searching for her entire life. You aren't asking her to change. You are changing the environment around her so that she feels safe enough to change on her own. This is how you earn a woman's devotion. Not by winning an argument or asserting your will, but by becoming the one man she no longer feels the need to hide from. When she realizes that she can be messy, uncertain, or quiet without it causing a crisis in you, she will naturally gravitate toward you as her ultimate source of security. The true turning point happens the moment she realizes that your energy doesn't waver just because hers does. If she goes cold and you stay warm, or if she gets anxious and you stay grounded, you are demonstrating a level of psychological strength that is incredibly rare. You are showing her that you are the emotional anchor of the connection. Most men are reactive. They let the woman's mood dictate their own behavior, which creates a volatile and exhausting cycle of back and forth tension. But when you remain consistent, you break that cycle. You show her that your peace of mind is not dependent on her validation, which ironically makes you the most attractive person she has ever met. It signals to her subconscious that you are capable of protecting her, not just from the world, but from the weight of her own fears. Ultimately, once that sense of absolute stability is established, the walls she has built over a lifetime don't just crack, they come down for good. She stops testing you because the results are always the same. You are steady, you are safe, and you are reliable. You have led her out of a state of defensive hiding and into a state of total trust, not by telling her what to do, but by showing her who you are. This is the foundation of a bond that can survive anything. When she feels that she can finally rest in your strength, she won't just love you, she will give you her full loyalty. By mastering the art of stability, you aren't just winning her heart, you are building a sanctuary where a deep, authentic, and lasting connection can finally thrive without fear